numerous occasions. Right? It is through his knowledge and his creativeness and his craftiness that he eludes the bad guys. And they get to the end of the movie, and it is I don't want to use the word harrowing, but it's a terrific adventure, and it's got a lot of romance blended into it. But from the perspective of Mgtow, you see a guy, and he's on his own in the jungle, making his own way, and his entire life is interrupted by this city-dwelling fool that shows up and bumbles her way into it and makes herself an anchor, basically, in his life. You know, she causes him to lose $50,000 in tropical birds, right? And then she pays him peanuts to be her guide and get her out of this trouble. It's hilarious. The whole movie is just hilarious. Now, at the end, right, there is a scene where she has to defend herself from the bad guy, and she's all alone. And she manages to do it, you know, in pure romantic fashion. And they end up meeting again at the end of the movie. You know, after she writes the story about her great adventure as a romantic novelist, right? He shows up with his boat, you know, in New York City, right? And he wants to take her with him. You know, it's got so many great parts of what a romance could be. And then it's got a lot of exposure. It teaches us, right, how women will treat you and how they think about you, how they minimalize your effort as a man, and how they aggrandize themselves, how they've got fanciful ideas about how the world should be. Right. But as usual, Hollywood makes exceptions. Right. For example, they end up in a village. They make exceptions for women so that they can succeed in these movies, and it helps encourage this feminist mindset. They show up in this village and they need a car to escape during one of their little misadventures. And they go to a house. There's only one car in town, and they knock on the door. Right. And it's... The guy's a wealthy drug dealer, and he points a gun at him and tells him to get lost, right? And they turn around, and the rest of the town is there with guns and knives, and they're gonna kill him. And Jack T. Colton, he's got his gun, and he's willing to fight to the death, right? And then at that moment, he says, "Hey, Joan Wilder, write us out of this one," right? And the drug dealer says, "Oh, you're Joan Wilder, the Joan Wilder, the romantic novelist, right? I read your books. I read all your books," he says. Right? Which is, it's bullshit, right? How is a Colombian drug dealer going to be interested in feminist romance novels out of New York City and have all of her books? And then he says to the guys, you know, the other people from the town, "This is Juanita, who I read to you all her stories on Sunday," or whatever, right? Like he's going to sit down with the townsfolk and read them romantic novels. But it almost makes the story rely on an ultimate fantasy in order for the rest of the story to flow, right? It gives some validity to her existence, right? It almost makes her life look like it was worth living to this point, because otherwise she was completely valueless to the story as far as getting them out. But at this point, this is where writers create an impossible thing, and women go, "Oh yeah, see how that works? He needed her." Right? It's absolutely ridiculous, and it's funny. It's a great movie, worth watching. I still watch it from time to time, and every time I watch it, Mgtow concepts just come to mind, right? And I love it when he says, "Was that the first moment when I saved your ass?" Right? Just hilarious, right? But at every turn, she's got to be critical, right? When something goes wrong, she's got to blame him. You know, but she can't get through the movie without Jack T. Colton, played by Michael Douglas. It's a fantastic movie. In the end, right, he escapes from the bad guys, gets the gem back, which he had to hunt down a crocodile and cut it out of its belly, and then he buys his dream boat. Buys his dream boat so he can sail around the world. Right? And he shows back up in New York to take her with him. And the sequel to the movie was called Jewel of the Nile. And it was kind of a box office flop, but I had watched it a couple times when I was younger just because I enjoyed the first movie so much. But in that movie, she's attached herself to him. And over in Europe, where they've sailed, she does nothing but complain and piss and bitch and moan. After saying that, she wants to be a part of his life and he's taking her along with. Right? She's got to cause more trouble, and she's constantly bickering and fighting with him because she's always got to be right. Sound familiar? Right. But that's how this works. The reason I think it's a great movie is because it shows a strong, masculine, independent man who's living on his own, doesn't need a woman, right? And literally living in the jungle, dealing with life and death situations, right? He didn't need a woman. To that point, he was perfectly fine without a woman. He had his own goals out in front of him. A sailboat, right? Individuality. Sailboats represent freedom, right? The ability to get away from other people, their influence and their control. It's all very, very, very symbolic. And then there's also this, the feminist propaganda. The movie does a great job of showing it, right? She doesn't need a man, right? She can make a living on her own, writing about, of all things, fantasy and the way it should be, according to their mind. But when that mind is put into reality, real life, it is woefully short and incapable. And it takes a man to save her ass again and again and again. And the places where she was helpful are complete and total fabrications, right? Anyways, it's all good stuff. A great movie to watch. Mgtow at the movies. I invite you to go there and watch with the Mgtow vision, Mgtow perspective. Enjoy the movie and then see the lies. See how Hollywood uses lies to push its propaganda, right? To push its indoctrination onto women and to get men to accept the bullshit parts of the story, right? Anyways, you guys, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for sponsoring the show also through PayPal and Patreon. And Scotch and cigars are nice. Thank you to everybody who's been helpful, useful in this by commenting down below, helping other men, right, with their opinions, not just racking and crashing on women, but, talking about what it means to be a man and what life is really about. It's not about just being a footstool and a stool pigeon, a utility, in other words, basically a money machine. That's not what our job here on earth is supposed to be about. That's what our job here has been turned into through feminist propaganda, through social pressure. So you guys, cheers to you. Help other men. Thumbs up this video, all Mgtow videos, but help other men by sending Mgtow links to videos that are very good. And it's not just young men, it's all men. But young men who don't realize what they're getting into, who think it's their turn to step up and show everyone else how there's, how to get married and do it right. I know that's the mistake I did. I thought I was going to do it right. Didn't realize, right, I was going up against someone someone who made Joan Wilder seem like an amateur. Anyways, guys, be cool. Semper Fi. Mgtow is freedom, right? And that's what it's about. Your life, freedom. Semper Fi.